Hey guys, this is going to be a video on just some troubleshooting things you can do for plotting. If things aren't quite looking how you want them to, things that you can go back and double check just to make sure that they're looking okay. So the first thing I wanted to go over is scaling. A lot of times things might look right, or it looks like you're putting things in and scaling them correctly, but it's still not showing up right. And so here are a few things that you can check if you pull in your drawing and it's not the right size. The first thing I would do is double check in the model space. I would type units, enter, double check that you're in inches here, and then in the layout, also type units, check that you're in inches there. If that's correct, the next thing that you can do is go to Page Setup Manager. So I'm right clicking on the Layout tab down at the bottom left corner, clicking Page Setup Manager, Modify, and then make sure that plot scale is just 1:1, that your paper size is 11 by 17. You got it at Adobe PDF, Landscape, but especially double checking that this 1:1 is correct. Don't scale line weights, and that you have the pen chart that you're wanting selected. And click OK. And if that's still not working, then one of the other things that you can do is just re-import it in. And so let's say I go to my XREF, I'm just typing XREF, enter. You can detach your drawing and then reattach it in. So navigate to that drawing you're wanting to attach, click open, and then for this scale here, don't check specify on screen, check uniform scale, and then if this is a 1 inch equals 1 foot drawing, we would just say 1/12. All of this looks good to me here, but most important is just making sure that you have uniform scale checked, or if it's unchecked, that you're then typing it into all of these. Click OK. Just placing it. And hopefully by then all of it will be looking correct to you. One thing you can do after you've plotted to just double check that things are correct, so I'm just opening the PDF that I have of it here. There's a tool, if you go to Tools in Adobe PDF and click on Measure, that'll be there, and so you can go, if you just click on this like Add button here, and then go back to your drawing, and it should be in this the banner on the right side here, and I click Measure, Measuring tool up here at the top. They have all these different snap and angle types, but really for the purposes of this class we'll mostly I would hold down Shift, and then it can help me check that if I know something is 1 foot in real life, it should be 1 inch here in the drawing, and so you can double check that way to make sure that things are looking correct, and you can even double check with the leaders that you've already drawn. This isn't as accurate as measuring within the CAD drawing because you can't snap to an exact point typically within PDF. And so one last thing that you can do to double check is measure within the model space. And so there's a few different ways to go about it. You could do like a linear dimension and click from one point to the next and double check that that's looking right. The only problem is I always click escape after it's measured, because if I don't and I click now, I have to delete out this thing. And then another thing that you can do is also just type PL or click on the polyline tool, and then it'll give you a little dialog box that's saying how far that line has gone there. So see the dialog box by my cursor that says puller 3 feet and 5/8 of an inch. That's one way to double check your work there. So those are just a few ways to troubleshoot if scaling isn't looking how you want it to. And then next I just wanted to go over line weights. And so if your line weights aren't looking correct, what you can do is make sure that first I would select your drawing here, and one thing I like to do that I didn't do here is make sure I usually do a new layer called the XREF layer, and you could add this drawing onto its own layer. That way you know for sure it's not on a no plot layer. And a no plot layer is when there's, if you type in the layer properties, or sorry, just layers, enter. I don't think that that's what I want to do. Oh, sorry, I already have it here. So the layers property manager, just put this out to here. Something you can do to make sure that things are going to be printing how you want them to is when you make a new layer, there will be, sorry, my mouse is giving me trouble here, 1 second. There will be this box here, and there's this little printer, and so if I make a new layer and I call it my XREF layer, I click rename, and I'm gonna just say XREF, and I could change the layer of this. So if it's not plotting, move it from one layer to another one. And then that way you can see if that layer is in a plot or no plot layer by checking on this little printing icon. And so right now there's that frame guides layer that we mentioned in the previous video that's not going to plot. And so maybe there's a chance that if something isn't printing, it's on, some of the layer work is on a no plot layer. And then maybe even also just check all of these. You can just click on these XREF layers, and so these are all the layers within my XREFs. And you can see, okay, only that frame guides layer is on the no plot layer, and the rest of these are showing. I'm gonna just collapse that there. Another thing that you can do, just to double check, is I really try to only use 1 or 2 different, or 3. It looks like I used colors here, and the hierarchy I like to do is the thickest lines being these section lines here on the edges, and then also sometimes I even like to do, and I kind of wish I'd done this in the previous drawings, but I would like to also make this top line on a darker layer too. So these 3 lines are typically going to be the darkest, and then any sort of borders around things, so like so this is going to all be on the darkest layer, and then next are these sort of borders between things that are going to be on dark but medium line weight, not quite as dark, things like these. And then after that, your hatches will either be on a gray layer or a very faint black layer. And so those are, I try to just keep the line weights very simple, and then just remember that for under the layer, under the layers, doing that again. Under your layer properties manager, make sure that the colors that you're picking are colors within your pen chart. And so make sure you're not clicking on like maybe this red if it's this red that you have in your pen chart. So I really just try to, when setting up the pen chart, I tried to only use these colors and maybe like this color here, because it's very easy to pick this one, as opposed to maybe something like between these greens are really hard to tell. And so just making sure you're not using a color for your layer that you don't have a color assigned to. And then once you're in this, the paper space, you can right click on the layout, go to Page Setup Manager, Modify, and then you can also just double check that you've assigned that color, that, okay, yes, I used color 1 and it should be assigned to this line weight and it's the color black. A lot of times, sometimes I'll forget to I'll remember to do this, like update the line weight, but I'll forget to assign a color to it, and so that might be something. So save and close. And then another thing that I like to do a lot is check display plot style. And what that does is it shows what it's going to look like before I print, and so that way I can see what I'm going to actually print out before I print it, and that can make things easier too. So those are a few things to keep in mind while you're plotting. And yeah, in general, just making sure that things aren't on no plot layer and that your line work is lining up with the pen chart. And that your line weight looks correct, that the outside lines are darkest. Here's a little bit of a better representation, that the lines on the outside are the darkest and then your hatches are lighter. This part is a bit subjective, but in general, you can look at a drawing, and as you start to keep doing AutoCAD, you'll be able to see, okay, when I look at this, what stands out the most? Is it, you don't want the hatch to be the thing that people notice right away, you want it to be the line work, because people will be measuring from the drawing. So I hope that helps. Those are just a few things that might be causing trouble if you're having trouble printing. Thank you.